Welcome to the Gifts from the Edge podcast, where you are about to meet parents and professionals, educators and entrepreneurs who have taken the path less traveled, and by doing that, have made all the difference. Now it's time to step out of the ordinary. Here's your host, Andrew Lord.
Hello, my friends, and welcome back to the Gifts from the Edge podcast. It's that special place in between worlds where you can meet the mentor, learn what it takes to step out of the ordinary and to start making a difference. And today we've got another very special guest, Michael O'Neill, who is a pioneer in the health and wellness space. But in the light of government oppression, he has felt compelled to take his quest into a completely different domain. And he stepped into the wild world of politics to ironically get government to step back and refrain from intervening in people's personal health choices. Now, Michael has been involved in the natural health industry for more than 35 years. He has witnessed firsthand the effectiveness of disease prevention using lifestyle change and harmless natural remedies. He has also been in contact with innumerable cases where people have been seriously damaged by so-called conventional medical treatments. And at the time this podcast goes to air, Michael's campaign for a seat in the Senate to fight for the democratic right of all Australians to take back control of their own bodies will be in full swing. So Michael, thank you very much for being here. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Andrew. Very happy to be here.
Great. Now, just before we were on there, we were having a little bit of a catch up about our family connection, how we got to know you and Barbara. So for the people who are listening to this podcast, if you could kind of just paint a picture for us, going back maybe 10 years or so and what you've done in the health space, that would be great.
Sure, Andrew. Look, I've been very much in the natural health industry for the last 35 years and running health retreats, either some that I own and others that I've worked for people. But in the last 10 years, you want me to be specific, we've been very much focused on our retreat at Misty Mountain, which is up in Bellbrook, Nulla Creek, west of Kempsey. My wife, Barbara, and we've just been helping people, getting on with life, enjoying what we do, changing people's life by instructing them in some of the very basic fundamental principles of healing, that is giving them a good diet, getting them to drink more water, go to bed earlier. But of course, when I got into politics, when I started to shine the light on particularly the childhood vaccination program and its major problems that it was having, which we were personally acquainted with, then all hell broke loose, of course, and the authorities, particularly the Healthcare Complaints Commission of New South Wales, which is a government organisation, they came after my wife because she was my Achilles heel, and they deemed that she was a threat to public health.
Wow.
A lady who was teaching people to eat well, to go to bed early, to drink more water, to abstain from harmful things like drugs, illegal and harmful legal drugs, that she was now a threat to public health. Now, I'd just like to say this, the Healthcare Complaints Commission, by its very name, is an organisation that deals with healthcare complaints. So if I as a citizen have a problem with some practitioner, whether that be a naturopath, a doctor or a surgeon, and feel that they've done something wrong to me, then I have an avenue to go to the Healthcare Complaints Commission, lodge a complaint, and they will investigate it. With Barbara, no one that she ever treated ever raised a complaint. The complaint was raised by some people who were involved in an organisation called the Friends of Science in Medicine, who are really pharmaceutical promoters. And they had an ideology difference with Barbara and myself, and so they used the instruments of protection to use it as a vehicle of destruction towards my wife.
Yeah,
it was quite an amazing thing. But anyway, look, I could talk about this for a long time, but so Barbara is now on a permanent prohibition order and doesn't even she spends most of her time outside of Australia helping people in other countries beside Australia.
Wow. Wow. That's a real loss for the people, here. But yeah, it really is, I guess, what this podcast is all about. We are talking about people who have been through the wilderness, into difficult times, and some of the things that they've been able to glean or to bring back from that place. You said that you were personally acquainted with the issues with vaccination. Can you tell me what you mean by
Yes.
that?
Well, my oldest son,
Mm.
we had no idea. We just had an idea that, yes, vaccines are good. That's what most citizens of Australia think. Vaccines are good. Your children are lined up and they're vaccinated, and that will guard them against disease. Well, we had our son have his first vaccine. He became quite ill. It was quite scary. He developed respiratory problems, and this lasted for probably a month or more. And we went to the doctor. We told them, look, this happened after the vaccination. We were told this had nothing to do with it whatsoever. It was just a childhood sickness. Okay, so he got better, and back in those days, I think that was at about 2 years old. Then probably about a year later, we decided, oh, well, if it was just a one-off, very coincidental, we went and did it again. This time it was far more serious. This time it was febrile convulsions, and at one point we wondered if he was going to die. And he was, I would say, years recovering. So we made a decision, you know what, we will not do that again. And that's all we decided. We weren't going to do that again. And of course we had a mild pressure back in those days because he's now close to 40. And we just continued on in life. We didn't do any of the other children. There's 8 children in total, and they all had extremely good health. So that's my personal involvement. And of course, since taking up the gauntlet with this, I was then introduced to people who either sought us out or other people got us to contact. Literally, I'm not exaggerating, thousands of people who have had similar problems. And I realised that this was a serious problem. It wasn't just a one-off problem, that there were literally tens of thousands of Australian families that were suffering with their children under the effects of a faulty and unnecessary vaccine program.
Yeah. At the risk of opening Pandora's box, I mean, why is it that these tens of thousands of stories don't show up on the so-called scientific radar, or if they do, how is it that they are not taken into account?
Well, we currently don't have a fair and square scientific community. Basically, media dictates the narrative these days, and they will highlight scientific, so-called science that would support their view, and they will ignore and even vilify any scientists that go against it. And one I could just think of straight away is Dr. Judy Wileman. Dr. Judy Wileman started her research into the politics of vaccine and vaccine, and she went from a position of pro-vaccine to one where she became extremely alarmed. And as Judy herself told me, she said, look, I'm just a scientist. All I do is follow the facts. And the facts led me down a trail of horror and heartache that was existing in families all over this country. But of course, what was the result of that? Was that taken by the media to be, a new breakthrough here, a scientist who's given 10 years of study to this subject has come to a conclusion that there could be a problem. No, she was vilified by the media. They tried to take away her PhD, but they couldn't because it was so impeccable. So they just vilified the poor woman, and she couldn't find no work. So this is what the Australian public, they're dished up with a one-sided view. And I have a very strong platform and view of parental rights.
Mm.
This is something that seems to have lost. Now, in today's culture in Australia, you will realise that most of these child agencies, they see that children have rights, parents have responsibilities. And from their point of view, your responsibility as a parent to do what they decide. Now, this is not how Australia was constituted, and this is not how Australia, a free nation, should be. Parents have rights. In fact, I believe in the parents' absolute and sacred right to bring their children up in the way they see fit. And the only reason that the law should be involved if they would do something, engage in acts of crime, like serious crime, as if they, for instance, if the parent turned out to be a pedophile or beating the child in such a merciless way that it was just gone beyond just pure discipline to absolute cruelty. But in lifestyle choices, whether that be religion, whether that be medical, whether that be social, that has no place in the government's scope at all. That is primarily a parent's prerogative, and and I personally fight ferociously for parents to be able to maintain and resurrect that right, which they have lost in Australia, unfortunately.
How does Australia compare to other countries in that regard? Like, I guess we're all on a spectrum globally. Where does Australia sit, do you think?
Well, Australia sits, I would put it would exist somewhere between China and North Korea, not probably between China, but very close. It follows a communist model where the state dictates how you will raise your children, what you will, no, we can't have religion. Yes, you will do this. You will be a good citizen. They'll have a social credit system. Look, we're having it. We have one of the most surveillance cities. We are very much dumbed down. The state dictates what we will be educated. Now, I think education is a great thing, but our schools have been lost in propaganda. In fact, I felt it was already on a slippery slope years ago, and of course, we homeschooled all our children, and I had no apologies about that whatsoever. The children are all successful. We taught them to all the basics of life, because I feel if you send your child to school, then they need to be taught how to read. They need how to be right. They need how to be good to preparing them for what? What are we preparing? We're preparing them to work. That's why they go to school, so that they can take their place in the workforce and be able to read, write, and have a basic understanding. But to the schools today, they have become vehicles of gender narrative. They, trying to get children to make choices about their gender in primary school. Like it's at a level of absurdity that would be never imaginable once, and yet we basically consider this to be perfectly okay by a vast section of the society, and particularly academia. So I want to see an end to all that. I want the schools to go back to be places where they learn to read, the 3 hours, reading, writing, and arithmetic, and prepare them to be useful and working citizens of Australia.
Yeah, it's a tricky one, because there's so much. Like, we homeschool as well, and many of the listeners would be homeschoolers or considering other forms of alternate education, thinking outside the box with regard to education. I think that education is, for me, education is a very broad term, and that there's other things that could be involved there. The challenge comes when parents kind of abdicate that responsibility and say, well, if education is going to be this broad thing, then I'll leave the kind of the raising to the school, and I think that steps into dangerous ground there.
It certainly is, and that's the situation. And I remember as a young child, I was sitting in a class in primary school, and we were talking. There was some lesson that was going to be about communism. They said, you know that in communist countries, the mothers all have to go to work, and the children are put in these centres where they're indoctrinated to be communists. And when they go home from the day, their mothers are not at home. And we were all like, oh, we couldn't imagine. Like, I'm 66 years old. Everybody I went to school with, their mother was at home. Their father worked somewhere, whether it was, and because I lived in town, they were working. They were on the council working. They were a tradesman. They were maybe working at the bank or the store. The fathers all worked. My father was a barber, and then the mothers were at home making home, and it was a wonderful life. And the children played on the street. It was a very safe place. We went home for dinner, and I realised how dysfunctional our societies have become, and we've lost value. And of course, good parenting now is considered. Yes, the children are at home, safe, with great emphasis on safe, sitting there watching an iPad. That's not safe. That's not safe. That's destructive to their mind, to their creativity, to so many aspects about these young people's life. Yet yet if they were probably out swinging off a tree or riding a bicycle down the street with no helmet, we would say, oh, this is bad parenting, letting their child be unsafe. Have we gone mad? Now, earlier question you asked me, how does it compare to the rest of the world? I'm actually very well travelled. And in fact, I'm always shocked when I come back to Australia to see the level of control and that's here. There's and it seems we never see children on the street playing, rarely, just in this lockdown society, and I find it really troubling. And I mean, of course, I can't initiate, as a politician or a hopeful politician. I'm not interested in making social changes, but I am wanting to see that the education system, which is state-run, concentrate on educating children and stop being social engineers.
Okay. So you have made a shift into politics. So you've moved, and you were sharing with me before that you're still kind of doing the work with Misty Mountain, and so still connected to people in that sense as a healer in that way. But you've made that shift into politics. You've kind of answered a little bit already, but what was the main motivation behind that? That's kind of one question. And the other part of that is did it turn out the way that you were expecting, or did you know what you were getting yourself in for when you made that step?
Okay. The first part of the question, it was no jab, no pay. No jab, no pay, I saw was a complete violation of our Constitution. It violated Section 116 of our, which guarantees religious freedom, because many people have a religious view about their vaccine. It also violated Section 5123A of the Constitution, and says there will be no civil conscription regarding medication to exist. And yet, our so-called Christian Prime Minister, he said there is no religious exemption. And there is basically no conscientious objection to this. You either fall into line, you do it, or you will be punished. You'll be punished by the removal of your legitimate legitimate tax concessions, which are only paid out to you in child payments. Your legitimate right to go to childcare. Now, I'm not a great fan of childcare at all, because but nevertheless, if the government says, well, one section of society is not entitled to have this this so-called privilege, and I felt that this was a slippery slope, and I used to say to many people, if you allow this to happen in the children, it was only a matter of time before they'll come after you, and they'll come after the adults. And of course, COVID has bore that up. Now, has it turned out as I expected? Not really. I felt that by starting a party that focused on parents' rights to be able to medicate their children as they saw fit, or not medicate them, that having a name that was kind of bold I already knew that there was 10% of Australian families felt that way,
Hmm.
then they would see it and vote, and then they would have representation. And I knew that we could get on 10% of the vote, there would be no problem to get representation in Parliament.
Hmm.
But what I didn't account for was the absolute, how can I say it, the blackout of media to our position.
Hmm.
We got no breath whatsoever. We were completely ignored because they are terrified that people might even be aware that there's such an organisation or such a party. You can say any bizarre thing you like in this world and get coverage, but you speak against the holy vaccines. These are then you are demonised. You are then become you've forfeited all rights for compassion, for the right to be able to function in society from their point of view. And I didn't realise the insidious and evil nature of the media and how complicit they were in this whole thing. So it's been very, very difficult to get out awareness that we even exist. And even social media, we thought, well, we can do it through social media. I read the book, The Storming of the Presidency, about how Donald Trump came, and it was all done through the social media at low cost. And I thought, well, this is the way we'll do it. And but then I found out that these behemoths that are controlled by these guys like Zuckerberg and that, they will shut you down.
They have their own agendas.
They are completely in step with this pharmaceutical narrative that there's only one way to health. That is through the needle. The needle is the way we to go, and the needle will save us, and the needle is holy. We must bow before the mighty needle, and anyone that speaks against this holy needle is not worthy to get to have any place in our society. They are just disgusting, vile, despicable Jews. I mean, anti-vaxxers. Honestly, the language and the tactics that are used against the so-called anti-vaxxers is almost a copy out of Goebbels' manual for the Nazi regime in Germany. And I don't say that lightly or flippantly. Yeah. I say it is actually a correct, and I've extensively read of those tactics, and I see the parallels so glaringly obvious.
What's been some of the you've shared with us some of the tough stuff that you and Barbara have had to go through because of this path that you've chosen? Has there been any big wins or highs along the way that you look back on and think, yeah, that was a breakthrough moment?
Well, legislatively with the government, we don't see much because they are just so big. But we see personally, both Barbara and I, we have great confidence in God. We believe in God, and we see that we are on the side of truth, and that a lie will always fail. So I don't get terribly discouraged, and I look at things that they say, and I think that's just a lie. It's not truth. So I don't get. That doesn't make me feel crushed and want to give up, because I realise, no, we are promoting the truth. They are promoting a lie. They are using all the tactics of vilification, of hatred, of malicious slander, and they would kill us if they were physically able and allowable to do it. I know that. That's just the nature of man. But I know that we do battle for right principles, righteousness, the truth, and the liberation and freedom. And these are all tenets that will ultimately win. And if you look back in history, you see that a lie never prospers. It has its day, and today we're having it. But I do see the facade slowly crumbling. For highs in the whole thing, well, we get personal highs as we see people see the light, so to speak. We meet wonderful people along the way, and I've met some of my dearest friends along the way now. On this journey, I've seen whole political parties turn. I just had a meeting last night with the in Sydney with the Liberal Democrats people, and they're a party that's completely embraced and understands now the insidious nature of the whole pharmaceutical narrative. So I believe that where once upon a time we were just an obscure minority that were concerned about pharmaceutical dominance, that's grown exponentially through the COVID lie.
Yeah. And you bring up there, the people that you've met and the connections that you've made along the way. And I think that can sometimes be overlooked, and it must be hard in the world of politics where you've got people, gunning for you all the time. And because of the nature of what you're doing, you're sort of always stepping into that space of people's crisis moments, people's stories of difficulty. But sometimes those challenging times can be when we connect the most, don't you think?
Yes. In a time of crisis, it draws together, and we are fighting for the very fabric of our society here. I've become aware since I've got into politics of just the whole insidious nature of control that exists in Australia and the state of New South Wales. And I've been doing an enormous amount of travel since on the election campaign, and I just realised how, for instance, I saw a radar today. No one flashed me the lights. Many years ago, if someone saw a radar, everyone would be flashing. People had their hands out the window, slow down, because we sort of looked and we thought, hang on, there's a threat up here. We're going to warn you. And we understood the government always wasn't our enemy and, wasn't our friend. And we stood tall. But now we've become this introverted society, and we see anybody that steps out of the norm. Even if you go a bit faster, I have people, because I move along and I don't make any secret. I go over the speed limit because we have probably the slowest speed limits in the modern world. And people flash me. People get indignant. I had someone cut me off the other day as I went to overtake, and I thought, wow, what's the matter with us as a people? We've become so embraced in any narrative, whether it's road or health, that we see ourselves. We resent people that step out of it. We resent individuality. We don't feel it in our core to warn people of danger up ahead, whatever that danger is. We become very self-centered, and I don't like it. I found it quite troubling the way our nation's gone, because I've seen this dramatic shift in my lifetime.
Do you think you see it more now that you've stepped into that world of politics? Because there is in politics, there's that there is a lot of duality. There's an us and them kind of debate style of supposedly coming to the truth, rather than open dialogue to be able to. Well, that's the way it appears to me. Maybe you can tell me otherwise, but do you think that that our political system has scope to improve in terms of being able to have conversations rather than debates?
Yes, and that's a good point, because I would like to have conversations. It's often very hard. We have this. I disagree with you. Now you're my enemy. This is not the way it should be. It should be that I have a different opinion. And what's your opinion? Yeah, I've heard that. I've looked at that. I don't agree. And I've been on a number of candidate debates particularly in the last couple of weeks, almost every night actually. So I've been sitting next to people on platforms that have a completely different viewpoint to I do. And I can see sometimes there's a lot of hostility there, and particularly those that are already sitting members. And I feel, what happened to this person? They're in the party now. So I'm not a great believer, even though I'm the founder of a political party, and in a political party, we allow a lot of diversity in the party, and for our individual we want them to be thinkers and represent our views. But I do know, and I've met many politicians, sitting politicians, that don't agree with their party position, but they cannot, regardless of whatever their constituents want, they cannot express or vote on that view, or they will lose their privileges and possibly their party pre-selection. You've seen this with Craig Kelly. Craig Kelly stood up and he made it. He opposed what was happening in his own party, and he was brave enough to stand up. There was no option for him but to leave after that. You can't. Their narrative is locked. It's worked out, and they have to follow that line, whether it's right or wrong. So party politics is not a good thing.
Yeah, it's strange for me to see. I remember when Rob Oakeshott, had the opportunity to become, well, he was independent, but to sort of stand independent. People kind of didn't like the fact that he formed a government with Labor, because this is a fairly national seat. But what he did in those 3 years for Port Macquarie as an independent, because he was able to just stand as an independent and speak his own views, was incredible. So no matter which sort of side of the fence you sit on, like seeing the capacity of what somebody can do when they are able to just not have to fall into line with a particular party line was amazing.
Well, what will happen, anybody that's in the balance of power, and I hope to be in the balance of power situation after this next election, and of course they will want your vote on certain things. And of course, everything has to be weighed up: what is best for the community, and what's best by your conscience, and what's best for Australia, and so forth. But so to get your vote and your support, you'll find yourself able to do many things, and they will allow many things to happen. But look, at my core, I'm a libertarian. I'm actually a great believer in small government. And the smaller the government, the better. I think it's great to have the government to administer the construction of our roads. On a vast country like us, I think it's fair to say that the government could possibly, look after our railways. But I don't even believe that I'm not even a friend of Medicare, to tell you the truth, because it basically is captured by pharmaceutical. There's no place. We all contribute to Medicare. If you decide to be natural and and go to a naturopath you have no support on a system that you pay tax for. So I feel that the system is so faulty. It was built on a faulty platform anyway. I just like to put this thought to you. Can you imagine if we used a fraction of our budget to educate the population on proper health habits, like drinking more water, going to bed early, and eating better food? We wouldn't have a hospital shortage. We wouldn't have a hospital bed shortage. We wouldn't have a doctor shortage, because people wouldn't have to go. So we say we have a health system, but it's nothing to do with health. It's a band-aid repair system, so-called. It's a sickness system. But a true health system on a fraction of the budget could see Australians much more healthy, using the media for something good instead of what they do. But of course, Andrew, I can't see it happening, because the media dominates the landscape, and it's in their interest, and the moguls that own the media, to have people in the never-ending vicious cycle that never lets them out of a pharmaceutical medicine.
Michael, we've got lots of listeners who I would call leaders, in their own small way. I've been wrestling with that term leaders recently, just because I'm working with a group of people who don't particularly like being called leaders, but they're actually artists, but they're leading community through their art. But we've got educators, parents, social entrepreneurs, and they're all passionate about making a difference in some small way. And in that way, they've got a lot in common with you. And this podcast, The Edge, is a place where we can meet mentors. I'm just wondering if you could speak to those people who may be, struggling for one reason or another, or just starting out on their journey, perhaps. If you could give them, a small piece of advice, given your vast experience and everything that you've been through, what would that be?
Well, it's hard work, and you need to be audacious about what you want to do. You need to be clear what you want to do. I know back in I caught a vision that I wanted to help people with their health. I saw the power. I saw it happen in my family, my sister, who was healed through natural remedies, and I thought, that's what I want to do. I would say for possibly the first 10 years of it, I was broke, but I never considered that a liability. I considered it an absolute, because I derived so much joy in pursuing my goal and seeing the results along the way. And ultimately, of course, that changes when your goals are right. I always say that money and the acquisition of money is one of the poorest goals that you could have in your life. It needs, if you've got a noble person, whether it's in arts, whether it's in health, in science, whatever it is, if you pursue it for the sake of the betterment of your fellow man and for noble goals, and just pursue it, you will ultimately find success, and you will find great satisfaction along the way. And I also believe that generally you'll find some sort of financial success as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's good. That's really good advice. It totally aligns with what I tell most of my clients as well. That there is a special something inside of everyone, and they need to tap into that, listen to that voice, and pursue it. And the rewards and the support that's necessary will come as a natural course of that. So, Michael, if people want to find out more about what you do in politics or what you do around health, where are some places that people can go to find out that?
Sure. Well, our health retreat is called Misty Mountain Health Retreat. And, of course, our website is www.mmh, that's Mike Hotel, .com.au. But the political party is the Informed Medical Options Party, and that's imoparty.com. And, of course, I'll be running in what we call the upper house, the Legislative Council, which is the large white ticket in New South Wales, and you can put a 1 over my name in column M for Michael. Group M for Michael, put a 1 up there, and you'll vote for me. And I'd be delighted to get into that place, represent your views, and bring some truth and common sense back into a place that is often bereft of both.
That's great. And I'll definitely put some links below so that people who are listening to this on the blog can click on those and go and check out the work that you do. Thank you so much for being with me today. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and your experience. I wish you all the best in your pursuits for the Senate and making a difference in that space, and also healing people, whether it be through politics, and getting new things in place, or whether it just be the work that you do still in the background, giving people life-shaping advice. It's fantastic what you do, and I know for a fact that there are many people who really appreciate it. So thanks for being with me today.
Andrew, it's been a pleasure. And all the best, and all the best to your listeners too. Thank you very much for taking time to listen as well.
And there you have it. Michael O'Neill, founder of the Informed Medical Options Party. A very different interview to what we've done in the past, both on this podcast, which is of course very new, but also the 80+ episodes of The Blueprint. Usually we've hung around that world of education and often didn't venture into politics. So it was exciting to do that. And I found myself, as we were going through, listening really carefully to what Michael had to say. And, there were so many topics, so many issues where I thought, I'd love to dive a little bit deeper into that one, tease that one out a little bit further and discuss it. Medicare, for example, personally, I think Medicare is a great thing in principle because it helps those who might not be able to afford access to health support. But I think that Michael raises some really good points, which is that the model has become a band-aid system to fix lots of problems that have been largely created by lifestyle choices. And, when you have that sort of system, you do potentially prop up those poor lifestyle choices. And, there's the possibility of it being fraught with intervention from other interested parties as well. So, those discussions, they're really complex, and I think there was a whole bunch of other moments where I thought, we could spend some time on that one, but we did want to keep it to that 30 to 40 minute window. And so if there's some thoughts that come up for you while you're listening to this episode, please leave a comment in the comments section on the blog. It's andrewlord.com.au/blog, or you can leave a comment just below if you're listening on YouTube. But when you do that, I really would like you to take on board what we discussed in this episode about that us and them mentality, which can so easily slip in to the world of politics. I think it's really easy to do. And, when you do that, it doesn't get us anywhere. It just builds that resentment. So, make sure if you're leaving a comment, you do that respectfully. Please leave your views, but make sure you do it with care and respect for our community as well. And if you want to go deeper with Michael on some of these issues, please use some of the links below. Go visit the Informed Medical Options page, and I'm sure that he has some ways there that you can engage with him. Before we wrap up, I just want to remind you that this episode is sponsored by the Lifestyle Design Quiz. You can find the Lifestyle Design Quiz at lifestyledesignquiz.com. You can take the quiz there. It just takes about 5 minutes of your time, and it develops for you a free personalized report which is going to outline your strength profile, your focus for growth, and in the free report that gets sent to you straight after, there are some coaching questions to help you get even more clarity on how to move forward in a smart way for your future. Unlock the future. All right, so that's all from me for this week. Hope you're having a wonderful time this week. Bye for now.